John, I had a great time. I talked about it on the show. We stayed at the Battery, right the Omni Hotel overlooking the baseball stadium. Incredible time watching the Braves play. My 9-year-old loved it. What's the latest for fans being able to be there in games? I think the governor of Georgia came out and said something about how he wants there to be fans in the Braves games soon. And I know Major League Baseball hasn't made a ruling yet, but the reason why I bring it up is all of the restaurants are wide open around the Battery, right? Literally in the stadium, they're connected. You don't even have to wear masks in much of the Atlanta area now. There are thousands of people showing up to watch the game on a big jumbo screen, literally right outside of the stadium. You're going to have fans present in Atlanta Falcons games. You're going to have fans present at the University of Georgia and at Georgia Tech. It seems crazy to me that the Braves couldn't have fans. So first of all, thanks for getting up early with us. That's a big lead up to a question. Are there going to be fans allowed anywhere in Major League Baseball before the season ends?
Well, Clay, good morning. Great question. I think right now I have not heard a lot from teams or executives about that plan being put into place to actually have fans in the ballpark, paying customers. To your point, there are areas around ballparks where people do gather in small numbers, obviously, to watch games, including the rooftops at Wrigley Field. We talked about that earlier in the summer. I think that I remember we had this conversation maybe a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how perhaps it becomes viable if you have a couple solid weeks of no positive tests among the playing population and no interruptions to the schedule. And, of course, it's been less than a week now since the A's got back on the field. And you look up, and we've got 2.5 weeks left in the season.
Yep.
And reports say now from Ken Rosenthal, our colleague at Fox, that it's likely that we'll see a bubble of some kind in the playoffs. So if you've got the bubble coming and you've got this very narrow amount of time between now and then, I just think that it's difficult for me to imagine MLB putting a lot of resources into putting that plan into action when it seems like to me they're using a lot of their bandwidth on doing the best they can to have the most secure playoff bubble they can. And then hopefully when you think about the 2021 season, that you're able to have fans back, the circumstances are a little bit different by then, and we get a little bit more of our normal routine at that point. It just seems like for this narrow amount of time, if you're going to move to the bubble anyway, Clay, that it seems like a lot of work and bringing in security, concessions, and a lot more ballpark personnel, the cost of that probably it's not feasible in the short term.
What's going to happen now that we're starting to look towards the postseason? I think a lot of people are still surprised. Oh, wow, 8 teams in the NL, 8 teams in the AL. And you've got a team, let's say the Cardinals, who are sitting here right now as we talk this morning at 18-17, and they've played 6 or 7 less games than everybody else. It could now be a factor in terms of getting into the playoffs where you're looking at win percentage as opposed to overall wins and losses. How is baseball going to handle this, and what number do you think the Cardinals can get to before the season is actually complete?
I think right now, Clay, the Cardinals should be able to get up above 55 games and maybe even 57 or 58 because you look at where they're at the moment. They had a doubleheader yesterday, doubleheader tomorrow, and then 3 doubleheaders next week, and then a final doubleheader on the last weekend of the season.
Wow.
So MLB's been able to schedule these doubleheaders. It's not ideal, obviously, but they're 7 innings apiece, so that part is easier on the pitching. So I really think that despite all the schedule interruptions MLB has had, they've done a really good job of just being able to manage those amount of postponements and get the doubleheaders scheduled and allow the schedule to be almost entirely having that level of integrity they need to be able to decide the playoff berths fairly. So I suppose it's possible we could see some makeup games if there was some sort of a tie or if some games mattered for the purpose of playoff seeding, maybe on that final Monday right after the regular season is over. But I think in general, Clay, that MLB somehow, with work from the union, with all these doubleheaders, has just really done a really strong job of scheduling these doubleheaders to the point that I believe every team is scheduled right now to play at least 56, maybe more than that, games. And that at least gets you into the range of being able to decide things on winning percentage. So it is not it is not nearly the scheduling calamity that it could have been.
Are you surprised now that we look back? I mean, we're talking about, for instance, I'm looking at the San Diego Padres, and they have played, I believe, 44 games, if my math is right, meaning they really only have 16 games left in their regular season. That we're here now, right? I mean, we're talking next week when we talk with you, we'll officially be in the quote-unquote pennant race. But, I mean, we're really kind of coming down the home stretch of the Major League Baseball regular season now.
Well, we are, and I think, to your point, Clay, a lot of credit has to go to the players themselves, the teams, the way MLB was able to get their testing regime put into place. There were certainly some issues early on, right during summer camp, but then that was resolved pretty quickly in terms of MLB contracting out their own testing protocols and the ability to evaluate those tests very quickly. Also learning as things went on. I think we noticed the Marlins outbreak was obviously concerning, as was the Cardinals, but then the last couple involving the Reds and the A's were much shorter in terms of their duration and their severity, because MLB just learned a lot of information about how to isolate and how long you shut the team down for to then resume and get back on the field. I think one thing that Ken Rosenthal mentioned this yesterday on FS1 as well, is that one possibility is that for the final week of the regular season, which is now, to your point, just a week and a half away, that even the teams that are playing at home might potentially base themselves at a hotel in their home city and have almost a modified isolation plan and be away from their families and any sort of potential infection there. So that way they can really make sure that by the time the playoff bubble begins, if it begins in that format, that there is the lowest risk possible of any positive test happening within the month of October. Because we've seen it before that a shutdown of 5 or 6 days tends to work. But we don't want to see that in October, obviously. So that is how probably MLB will try to handle this, is maybe move everybody into a bit of a modified bubble for the last week of the regular season and then give everybody the best chance to stay healthy through October. But I think overall it's been a success story, Clay. It really has been. I think baseball and the players collectively deserve a lot of credit, and hopefully just working together on a very difficult issue as things have gone along will bring about even better relations in the future from a labor standpoint. At least that's my hope here as an optimist looking forward.
Are the Yankees going to make the postseason?
That is an excellent question, Clay, because right now they are a game and a half ahead of the Baltimore Orioles. The Yankees right now are tied in the loss column with the Orioles and the Tigers, which, just think about that sentence. Yankees tied in the loss column with the Orioles and the Tigers, things we never thought we would be saying with 2.5 weeks left in the season. They're just not playing good baseball right now, Clay. They lost again last night. The pitching has let them down. They're playing right now in a tough ballpark to really get things going because of all the runs being scored in Buffalo right now. I'd like to think, if you're a Yankee fan, you think about all the investment they made in Garrett Cole, they'll find a way to get in there. But I think that you look at the Orioles and the Tigers, there's a lot of schedule left, 2.5 weeks. And those two young teams, we've seen it before so many times, Clay, especially in baseball. When teams are playing relaxed, like there's nothing to lose, they're very dangerous. And when teams are playing tense because they're afraid of losing something, this baseball is one of these sports, probably the one that best fits this example. You cannot play it better by trying harder. It's different than football, where you can always, hockey, sports where effort matters so much. Baseball is not quite like that. And the Yankees right now are living that, where they're trying so hard and the results are not there. And it really, I'm starting to believe there's a legitimate chance that the Orioles or Tigers catch them.
In the NL, the Dodgers aren't just having a great record. When you look at run differential, they're almost twice as good as everybody else in the American League. And ironically enough, the Padres are the second best run differential, I think, in all of baseball right now. Are the Dodgers the best team in baseball? But is it possible another team in their division, the Padres, is the second best based on the numbers that we've seen so far?
You're right, Clay. And I think you look at the American League right now, in the AL, I'm not sure there is a favorite. And I think in the NL, you've got a clear favorite in the Dodgers and then a clear team the Dodgers should be nervous about in San Diego. And that's kind of how I look at it right now. The Dodgers, in fact, you think about in our lifetimes, the gold standard for regular season baseball would be the 0-1 Mariners. Of course, 116 wins, AL record that they set back then in 2001. The Dodgers have a better winning percentage than the Mariners did.
It's pretty wild.
right now. So that's how great they've been. A huge comeback win last night for the Dodgers, and the Padres. They lose Hosmer, which is a concern, of course, such an important player to them. But I think what they've done with their rotations has been very impressive. They bring in Clevenger. Their bullpen has been fortified. Such an exciting team with Tatis. The Padres love the way they play. So I would say the Dodgers still the favorite. Their bullpen, I think Jansen's better now than he was last year. Dylan Floro has emerged. Blake Treinen has emerged. Mookie Betts has played exactly how they expected him to play. Of course, the great graduate of Overton High School. So I think a lot to like about the Dodgers. They're the favorites to me, and now it's just a matter of can they live up to that test here when October rolls around.
Last question for you, and it has nothing to do with baseball. We're talking to Jon Morosi. Appreciate him getting up early with us here. What's the vibe in Ann Arbor? Because I look, you're there at the University of Michigan's hometown, and there are all different sorts of battles going on. The Big Ten battle of whether or not they could potentially play fall sports. You got the grad students who are now threatening to strike. The students, I think, are back on campus. What's the latest on the ground for somebody who lives in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, Clay. Well, so I've been around campus a little bit in the last week and a half or so, couple weeks. It feels, in terms of the foot traffic and people walking around, maybe about 80% of normal in terms of how you see people walking around. And so, and certainly I've had that thought driving by Michigan Stadium, beautiful weather, like, oh my gosh, I miss it right now. I do. I understand just a lot of the concerns that are happening as well. So I kind of get both sides of the issue, but it's a unique fall. Certainly, the weather here actually has been pretty beautiful. So it's kind of, I think that's kind of picked up the mood of everybody. But it's certainly different. And you look in 3 hours away in South Bend, they'll be playing. I think this weekend, 20% capacity there at Notre Dame. So it's obviously a unique fall, different fall for so many reasons. But I would say the general vibe and this seeing people around, I would say it's definitely not normal, but it's probably like 70% normal, 80% normal in terms of the foot traffic, and let's hope that however things play out, that just as long as we can stay healthy, that one day that we'll be able to just talk about why Michigan can't beat Ohio State again, and that'll be the big debate here.
You never would have believed that you'd be wishing for a when will Michigan ever beat Ohio State again discussion on the show. Jon Morosi, appreciate it, my man.
Thanks so much, Clay. Really appreciate it. Thank you.